Hey everyone, this is Chad from Present Day here to tell you that the episode you're about to listen to is actually about 3 months old. Whoops. For various reasons, it was never edited and uploaded during our hiatus, but we're glad to have it for you now. And good news, if you didn't already see on our social media, we've recorded another episode that should be live next week, with plans to record more on a more regular basis. So lots more Avatar content headed your way. We talk more about the hiatus in the next episode, so in the meantime, enjoy our discussion on The Great Divide, and if you feel so inclined, we would so appreciate if you reached out to us on Twitter at XRoadsPod, through our phone number 3145-YIP-YIP, remember that is 314-594-7947, and through leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much. Bye. Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Crossroads of Destiny, an Avatar: The Last Airbender universe podcast. Right now we're talking about every episode of Nickelodeon's Avatar: The Last Airbender, one at a time. I'm Chad Hopkins, and I'm joined by my co-host, Andrew and Melanie Grant. How are you two doing?
Pretty tired, but we're good.
Yeah, we're doing all right.
Doing great. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump into things, and we'll go ahead and say up front that this is probably a shorter episode, just because, I mean, if you've seen this episode... you have seen this episode, I'm sure. You know that it's kind of not much going on, which is fine. It's a perfectly good episode, but not a whole lot necessarily to talk about. So going on to the episode discussion, we are talking about The Great Divide, which is Book 1, Chapter 11. It is directed by Giancarlo Volpe, written by John O'Brien. It aired back in May of 2005 on May 20th, and was animated by DR Movie. And here's our summary. The next stop of the trio's journey on their way to the Northern Water Tribe is the Great Divide, a large canyon. Some might say a great, or a grand, even, canyon.
Mayhaps.
Normally, they'd fly over it, but they come across two tribes called the Ganjins and the Zhangs, who have been feuding for 100 years. So, seeing an opportunity to flex his Avatar peacemaking chops, Aang solicits his friends to travel through the canyon with them to see if he can help them to move past their differences. So... anything right off the bat jump off the page, off the screen to us that we'd want to talk about?
I think I mentioned it earlier whenever we were watching the episode itself that this animation is very different in this episode.
Yeah, we get a couple of flashbacks that do feature very, very uniquely different animation from what we've... Well, obviously from what we've seen normally, just because it's a sort of out-of-episode kind of experience.
Right.
But then the difference between the Ganjin story side of events and then the Zhang side of events... the Zhang's animation is like really sharp and jagged and rougher.
Edges.
Yeah, a lot of edges. And then the Ganjins, who, as you would expect, it's a little bit more extravagant. It's softer. It's prettier to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Refined.
That's a great way to put it. That's a really great way to put it.
Yeah, and even with their facial expressions, I noticed that, like, even with like Aang's face, whenever they would get exasperated about something, it was just a different style than we've seen in any of the episodes, I think. Yeah,
like when he got mad at them at the end when he discovered everybody had been carrying food when they weren't supposed to, and then he saw the egg custard and his eyes got real big. Yeah. Super anime kind of stuff.
Yeah. They've been leaning on that a little bit more. You saw that a little bit with Katara when she was simping over Jet the other day.
Simping?
Oh, sorry. When she first met Jet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there is a little bit of controversy with this episode we can get to as we sort of discuss the events leading to the ending.
Spill the tea.
But just starting off the beginning, we have a glimpse into Aang's peacemaking ability when Sokka is complaining about Katara's firewood gathering capabilities, and Katara is complaining about Sokka's, you got to put the tarp on the tent because it might rain. And Sokka, no, it's dry season, and plus it's a really good blanket, so why would I even do that? But Aang says, okay, just switch jobs, do it the way you want to do it. That's it.
That's it.
Yep.
I think it's funny that we mentioned in the episode before how there wasn't any clear leader in the beginning, and then we kind of said that was Sokka. I think Aang came out in this episode very leadership-like.
Yeah. So, I mean, that goes to what Andrew was saying in that episode as well, was that everybody in the trio has a little bit of leader in them, and sometimes they have to take turns leading the troops.
Who has their big boy pants on that?
That's literally what I was just about to say.
I mean, they're
like
still
we're married.
kids, so they're still going to have their moments much more frequently than most of not wanting to listen to the others or not wanting to do their part, and so the other has to then put them in line.
Aang's focus is over action rather than harsh words, and fairness was something he emphasizes pretty well too, about how can I be fair to both sides of the party.
Yeah, because he didn't want to just like shut it down. It was important that both sides were actually appeased in some manner.
Right. I thought of The Office, where there's the conflict resolution and it's the win-win-win. Everybody wins, including me.
We could quote that whole episode.
Yeah, probably.
You wear the poster on your friend.
This is the wrong podcast, guys. I already finished that other one. Okay, so we do meet the Ganjins and we meet the Zhangs, and they have this 100-year feud. And I guess 100 years at any point set in the show when it's not about Aang should leap off the screen, because Aang was around 100 years ago.
Yeah.
True.
And so that does play into things when we get to the end of the episode. And their differences with each other mostly just comes down to personal insults over cleanliness and thievery, and we don't get the full story right away. Katara is the one who sort of pushes Aang into helping them out. She sees the opportunity for him to learn and to flex those muscles and to see if he even can solve this conflict between the two tribes. And so Aang's like, oh, sure, okay, fine, we'll give it a try. And so he tries to get them to just travel together, but of course it's not that easy. But he is able to at least get them into the canyon and start traveling. And we do get that sweet little canyon guide. And I got to look up the actor's name, but it's the actor who played Mr. Beauregard in the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory movie.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Violet's father.
Dad.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I'll have to look up his name. I'll do that in just a moment.
He's still living? Like, that was a long time ago.
Well, he's not anymore.
Oh, awkward. Oh,
in 2005, he was.
Oh, my God.
I'll cut out some of this time.
That would be great, because this really took a morbid turn. But thanks for that question, babe.
His name is Leonard Stone. Leonard Stone. And that's the thing he's most known for, is as Mr. Beauregard in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. But yes, he did die in 2011.
Okay, cool.
So anyways, that's a fun little tidbit. Do we have anything to say about how things go while they're in the canyon?
I mean, that sucks. Those canyon critters.
Yeah, the canyon crawlers, canyon roaches.
Nightmare fuel.
Yeah, those are they're pretty terrifying.
They are really gross.
Yeah, no.
If anything that the show does really well is to make the animals in it look either super cute or super not.
Yeah, it's like there's not too much of an in-between.
No. And they were terrifying. I was like, it was in between, like, what are those things called? A rhinoceros beetle with those big pincers in the front? Is that what those are called?
A Hercules beetle.
Something gross.
The horned beetles?
Yeah.
I don't know. Something with pincers, and it's nasty. And that's what that one looked like. That with spider legs. That's not okay. And they just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, no. They're terrifying.
Okay, so once Aang has convinced them to go into the canyon together and just share the canyon guide, the canyon guide says, okay, listen up, everybody. We can't take food down in there because these canyon crawlers that we've already discussed a little bit, they're going to come after us. It's going to attract predators, is what he says. That he leaves it sort of open as to what predators are going to come. So everybody eats, presumably, and then leaves all their food behind, presumably. And that ends up not being the case.
You totally know it's not the case.
Not at all. And it's funny the way things play out in the episode. Aang says, okay, these people go this way, these people go this way, after the canyon guide has sort of been knocked out of commission.
Yeah.
Because he can't earthbend anymore. And Aang sends Katara with one group and Sokka with the other. And they both get their own biased version of the story that led to the feud in the first place.
I did enjoy the flashbacks, though. Those were fun, and those were pretty cool.
Wei Jin and Jin Wei.
Yeah.
Interesting names.
Right. And how, of course, both of them immediately leaned into these stories, and like how they found common...
How easily they were indoctrinated by
it was like almost
groups.
instantaneous.
Yeah.
My favorite part about it was, so we see that the Ganjins were the first one to reveal that they had brought food. And Katara's response was, so you're the ones who brought in food. And they're like, well, yeah, but you really think that the Zhangs didn't bring in food? So obviously, why would we not bring in food if they're going to bring in food anyways? Mm-hmm. And so that was Katara's response. Mm-hmm. When the Zhang bring out their food, Sokka's just like, hey, look, food, eat me. Yes. He doesn't, there's no criticism, there's no scorn. He's just happy to have something in his belly.
Yes.
I think I gasped when I saw them reveal all of that. I was like,
and then
that's so rude.
The Zhang backward logic of, well, the Ganjin would have already assumed that we brought in food because they think they think so lowly of us.
So you're just feeding into
that we knew that they were going to bring in food. So we brought in food.
Right,
and I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah,
like,
it's pretty awful.
No, and what I don't know if I necessarily put this together as a kid, but I definitely saw the political affiliations that you might see between these two. You definitely have like an elitist class and a working class. I'm sure when I was 12, this went completely over my head. But revisiting it, you definitely see like you just have these biased stories with this biased background about something that didn't affect any of the people who are actually doing anything. That is now causing such an unprecedented level of prejudice against the other group, even though it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, basically.
And it's so frustrating to see it now because it's like the wokest thing that a cartoon could have showed a 12-year-old. And since I had no idea what was going on, it went completely over my head. But now I can appreciate it a little bit more because I'm just like, whoa, this means something. Like this is, so you can unpack this a little bit, but we're not going to because it's going to get way too political. But I just enjoy the fact that there's just some obvious things that you can like associate between these two. And ultimately in the end, it just didn't matter.
Right.
Even if that was the case, it's just one of those like, get over it. Who are you helping by maintaining this? And so that's ultimately what led up to some form of unity between these tribes.
Well, the thing is, it gets to the end of towards the end of the episode, and they're at the other side of the canyon, and they're about to try to get up, but they don't have earthbending to build themselves up, and so they have to get together in some way to find a solution to escape the canyon. Well, Aang says his whole action over harsh words. They're like, maybe the Avatar's right. Let's duel to the death and let this feud end once and for all. And that's obviously not what Aang wanted.
Right.
Still, that eventually leads to the discovery of the food as Aang stops their fighting, and the canyon crawlers come out, and there's tons of them this time, and Aang is able to find a way to use the canyon crawlers to their advantage and have everybody climb their way out. And so we see them working together. In fact, the leader of the Zhangs and the leader of the Ganjin actually work together to overcome the same canyon crawler and climb their way out. And they get to the top, and it's like, I never thought I'd see a Ganjin be able to get his hands dirty. And they say something complimentary about the Zhangs as well. And it's like a moment of peace. And you're like, they figured it out. They got past it. Nope. They pick up right where they left off. Yeah. Too bad that we're so entrenched in our beliefs and we have such a heavy grudge that we can't get past
Forget
this.
The things that I'm literally witnessing in front of me because I already know too much. I think I know too much about you and everything you represent.
It's an inability to let go of the past.
Yes.
Yeah. Despite how...
Or to accept new information.
Right. Exactly. So this is the controversy of the episode. I have seen some criticism over the ending because what happens was Aang tells a story. As I mentioned earlier, he was around 100 years ago. So presumably, maybe he did know Wei Jin and Jin Wei. And they were just playing a game of redemption on the sports ball field. And it was just a timeout.
He sits on a throne of lies.
And after they walk away, and they're buddies now, and they're going to walk into Ba Sing Se as one tribe rather than these two separate tribes, Aang then reveals to Katara that it was a lie.
It was all
a lie.
Made it up.
I totally believed him.
Yeah, that's the controversy. Yeah. Should an avatar lie if the outcome is peace?
I mean, knowing what... without giving too much away about the things that are to come.
You are the worst.
Yes. And I think previous avatars would have definitely done that and more, and far more, to bring peace.
I agree. I think that if the outcome is peace, and it's going to result in peace for basically everybody, this is a pretty harmless thing for him to do.
Yeah.
You know, like, yes, it's a lie. Yes, it's not a great message for kids who are watching necessarily, but it wasn't a harmful lie that was keeping people from important information. It was a way for people to get past their differences and realize that they can work together and they can coexist.
I think the bigger thing to unpack here is the fact that they didn't combat it.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like they were looking for a reason to meld their tribes together.
Almost. And the fact that you can also say, like, none of them knew firsthand. Like, if they think they have a firsthand account, that would be new knowledge to both tribes.
Right. There was the question
of sitting there know what happened. They know what they've been told has happened.
Right. There was a question of, what about our tribe's ancient redemption ritual? And they don't even know what the redemption ritual is. They're so willing to accept that it's just a game. It's a sport.
Right. Because they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing, any single one of them to have known well enough what happened besides through some secondhand knowledge or a story being passed down. And then for there to be a possible firsthand retelling of the story, they're more inclined to accept it because they can't combat it with anything else they know. Mm-hmm. And so even if they ask questions, Aang can explain them away. And I think that if it was like more ingrained into who they were as people, like if they're only like this because of this story, or this had some bigger impact other than a feud, I might be like, Aang probably shouldn't have like straight up lied to these people. But on the second hand, that wasn't the case. It was, even if it was real, even if the Ganjins imprisoned what's-his-face for 20 years, even if the Zhang tribe mugged this dude and took the ball or power sphere, whatever you want to call it, even if that was the case, they've been living their lives for the past 100 years, period. Things have moved on. They're just still angry about something.
Right.
So I think Aang was well within his right to be like, what if that wasn't the case? Would you still be angry? And the answer was no, because they've still been living their lives. They've still been doing their own thing. Mm-hmm. But as long as they could hate the other tribe for some reason. And he's just like, let's put a pin in that because maybe that didn't happen. And then they were able to move on. And I think that was more important in the long run.
And you know, something that just occurred to me, another reason why they might have been so willing to let go of this feud is because they're all refugees. They are all fleeing towns that were destroyed or were occupied by the Fire Nation. And so they have a common enemy already. They don't need an enemy in each other. And so having an excuse to let go of that feud in order to travel together, to look after each other, to walk into Ba Sing Se as refugees as one, where they're going to be living together anyways, I mean, they might as well let go of that feud at this point. And so I think that they really do find that they have more in common than differences. But even those differences, as Aang puts it, they respected each other's differences enough to share the same playing field. So that they're able to put that aside.
And I think, obviously, at this point, both tribes can benefit from each other, more so than just not having the same enemy or an enemy within themselves. But like, it was kind of joking in the beginning about the sick people and the old people. Maybe if
you were cleaner,
y'all were cleaner, you would have less sick people. And then the other tribe was just like, well, maybe if y'all weren't so clean, you wouldn't have as many old people. And they think it's like the harshest comeback. And you're like, no, that's actually like why they have old people.
Right.
and so like you have this, you know, like obviously the Zhangs haven't been, they're kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum. Like they've kind of ingrained themselves into doing one thing one way too much, and they need to find middle ground. Both of them can benefit from it. I think that's an important part of this episode as well, is the fact that you can't be too far one-sided. There has to be some balance. There has to be some moderation. And I think as the Avatar, Aang knows that. Aang knows that his job is where there's imbalance, he must bring balance. And so this lie doesn't necessarily mean anything as long as he can not only benefit these tribes, he can also bring balance and less feuding between the two of them. And honestly, they're going to be starting their new future anyway. They've left their homes. They don't really have a past. I mean, like they can hold on to their history as much as they want to, but ultimately, wherever they're going is starting a new chapter in both of these tribes' lives. And so they can't be holding on to these limitations of the past if they're ever going to have a future.
Just a couple more quick things to say about this episode. I like that this episode shows more of the sort of typical duties for the Avatar outside of a war.
Yeah.
Like he is supposed to be the moderator, the person who brings peace to the spirit world, to the normal world, to people, to creatures, to nature. And so it's nice to see him step aside from just the war of things and to just help people who are having problems. And then there was one other quote I thought we could talk about before we close off and get into our predictions. The guide approaches Aang while they are camping at night, and he says, "Lonely, isn't it, being impartial?"
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know, do we have anything to say about what kind of thoughts or feelings that quote brings up?
I was thinking it's more like just a glimpse into the future of once Aang learns all of his elements that he's supposed to, that it's going to probably be, he's going to feel like it's going to probably be pretty lonely for him, being the one that has to have all of this responsibility.
Being set apart.
Set apart.
Mm-hmm.
Because, he is the Avatar. They're his friends, the people he's interacted with, they're friends with him, but ultimately it's like, he's probably feeling it's like a task that he has to do on his own.
Right, and I think we already see Aang is not necessarily in line with anything currently. He's a representative of the air temple and the air nomads, but they don't exist anymore.
Mm-mm.
So he's already kind of alienated in that sense.
Yeah, he's already like truly neutral because the people
Right.
he aligned with do not exist anymore.
Right, and so,
Right.
even in the sense that now that he is aligned himself against the Fire Nation, that doesn't necessarily make him welcome in the Earth Kingdom or part of a water tribe. He doesn't have a home with these people. Mm-hmm. Some of them will help him. Maybe they won't. But he's not a part of that.
I do want to say something in response to what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that I agree that Aang has set himself against the Fire Nation. I would say he set himself against Fire Lord Ozai.
Fire Lord Ozai.
And
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Okay.
I almost said it as such, but
Mm-hmm.
yes,
Yeah.
he set himself against Fire Lord Ozai.
Right.
And I guess the more to the point was that doesn't necessarily put him in line with the Earth Kingdom.
Right.
Or the water tribes.
Right. I just wanted to make it quick.
Yeah. And I also thought it was interesting to go back to the fact that we're seeing these kind of duties of the Avatar outside of getting ready to fight Fire Lord Ozai, in the sense that they get to this canyon, they know that they can fly over on Appa, and they choose to go down. Like, Aang had every reason to be like, actually,
No.
I don't have time for this.
Right.
I have to learn 3 new more elements
Yeah.
to defeat the Fire Lord before Sozin's Comet comes, and that's only in a couple months. So, y'all have fun. I mean, it would.
Out.
I felt like it would have been well within Aang's capability to just be like, "I'll help your old people and your sick people. We'll get them across where they need to go, but I'm going with them."
Right.
Like,
You
y'all
take
don't
care of the
need
rest.
me. I'll help y'all because that's my job as the Avatar. And I felt like his duties would have been done at that point. For him to have to escort these people and add more time to his journey, despite the fact that he was already in a massive time crunch, that was some next level Avatar kind of stuff. And I was just like, I mean, you just see that he has to be pulled into these situations. He has to, but I mean, granted, he learns from them, and it's part of his story and everything. But it just seems like, how much is on this kid's plate? Where does his responsibilities really end? Like, he didn't know who these people were.
Mm-hmm. They just sort of happened upon him.
Yeah, and now he has to be involved in their lives, and 100-year feud between the two of them. How is that his job?
Yeah. The journey that Aang goes on in this episode is, he lies, but I think it's because of what we've already gone over, which is that he realizes that the feud, this 100-year feud, was the only thing keeping these people from working together and getting along with each other. And so the lie was his way of getting rid of that barrier between them and letting them live their lives. So that's a lesson in and of itself, not necessarily the lying part. I don't think that that's necessarily a takeaway that kids would have for this episode, that lying's okay necessarily. But I mean, in this instance, it was okay. It was harmless. It didn't hurt anybody. And it, in fact, brought people together rather than took people apart. So let's talk about Melanie's predictions.
I'm 0 for 2 on my prediction.
Yeah. So what did Melanie predict for this episode?
that we would get some Fire Nation backstory.
Dang it.
Not this time.
I am so
I don't
frustrated.
even think we saw fire bending in this
No,
episode.
there weren't any fire. Zuko didn't even make an appearance.
Zuko
So.
again was the next
Okay,
one.
I got it.
So,
I didn't get
so
it right.
nothing there. And then I think it just wrote learning, and I think that was
More
water bending.
Yeah, more water bending. Well, we did see Katara do some more water bending with her little pouch waist satchel thing, but I don't think we saw any of Aang doing anything.
That was the episode before.
No, she did it again.
Yeah, she did in this episode. Because
Right.
she would.
But it wouldn't have been new.
No.
That was my point.
No.
And Aang didn't learn any new water bending. So I think what we were going with was that we were finally going to get back on track in terms of Aang mastering water bending.
I guess I just want him to do what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, that'd be nice, right?
Well, I will go ahead and say that our next episode is called The Storm. And I will also say that it is a big one. So, Melanie, what do you have thoughts about The Storm?
I am the oncoming storm. No. Oh, it's Doctor Who. Don't look at me like that.
No, I know.
Okay. Let me see. I have to think about it. The storm.
Well, first off, do you think it's a metaphorical or literal storm?
You know, this is what happens to me. That I think
That
it's
you thought the
totally
Great Divide was a
metaphorical.
metaphorical
Yeah.
divide.
So I'm gonna.
I mean, it was, but it wasn't. Like, if the canyon wasn't called the Great Divide, you
would have
could
been a metaphor.
see the metaphor between the two tribes.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess.
However, it was called the Great Divide.
Shut up.
Okay, just make sure. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so okay, so I could totally just go against my own strategy and say that it was literal.
Literal storm. Got it.
Okay. What else?
Maybe this is going to be
Why would there be an episode about a literal storm?
an impediment for them to go more north for him to continue to learn.
Okay, so another obstacle.
Another obstacle.
What do you think? Do you think we'll catch up with Zuko and the Fire Nation at
Man,
all?
I don't know what Zuko's doing. Not tracking him. At least not that we've seen. Maybe. Let's say
'cause
yes.
did we have?
He's
We haven't seen him
obviously
in
a
2
master of
episodes.
evasion.
Yeah, did we have Zuko in Jet at all?
Not at all.
No. So
We-
the
we-
last time we saw him was
Episodes.
Waterbending Scroll.
Yeah.
So we have had one episode with just showing Fire Nation soldiers, but we haven't had
Yeah, no Zuko.
or Uncle Iroh, which I really miss Uncle Iroh. So it would be really nice to see him.
Zuko and Uncle.
Okay. Anything else? Any other thoughts about what could be coming in the storm?
Man, I feel like it's metaphorical though.
How about this? If it's metaphorical, what do you think it's about?
So it could be the
Just be like, or.
or it could be the internal struggle that Aang is having with himself. Maybe he feels like it's too much pressure.
Okay.
He has 6 months.
Is this his storm with being the Avatar?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Avatar storm.
But that's it. I don't want to make any more.
Okay, I like those. Let's see how
Sounds
they
good.
turn out in our next episode.
Woo.
With that, that's the end of the 10th episode of Crossroads of Destiny. Thank you all for listening and continuing to listen. Please find us on social media at XRoadsPod. Go to Apple Podcasts, drop us a rating and a review. We actually got a new rating recently. I don't know if it came with the review. Sometimes Apple Podcasts is a little bit slow to update those. But in any case, we would love to get more of them to help build our audience and be more visible to more people. If you would like to give us feedback directly or send ideas to the show, you can email xroadspod@gmail.com. And you can also leave a voicemail 3145-YIP-YIP. That is 314-594-7947. Keep it around a minute or so, and we might include it on the show. We would love to include it on the show. Melanie, where can people find you online?
They can find me at MelanieAmanda44, and that's on Instagram.
Andrew.
Doesn't exist on the internet.
So you can find Andrew on the X-Roads Pod Twitter account following that. And you can also find him through Melanie and I. You can find me on Twitter at Chadadada. That is CHADADADA. My other podcasts are the Cinescope podcast, which is a movie show where we talk about the movies we love and why we love them. And there's an American Workplace where we talk about every episode of The Office. And so you can go listen to both of those and let me know what you think. Show notes and contact information for this show can be found at our website, xroadspod.com. And that is all for this week. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you in episode 11 when we talk about Book 1, Chapter 12, The Storm. Bye.
Bye.